This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the NEGOTIATEx podcast. We are continuing our conversation with Melissa Fortunato, a negotiation and conflict resolution trainer and consultant, and former FBI crisis negotiator. If you haven't already checked out part A of the show, be sure to do that first. Let's jump in the conversation with Melissa.
You've mentioned active listening a couple times now. I wanted to go back. And what does that look like when it's done effectively? And have you ever had a situation where active listening actually changed the outcome?
So active listening, the way it looks and sounds, there's an amazing quote from Stephen Covey. I don't know if you know, he wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yeah. But he says, seek first to understand before being understood. In my experience in life, most people don't do that. Right. Most people want to be able to tell you how they feel, what they think, and they may never ask you anything of your side. So active listening really is just that. It's, okay, let me hear what's going on with you. Tell me everything. And there's 8 specific skills to it. They're important, but I think the overall takeaway from the 8 active listening skills that I was trained on how to communicate as an FBI negotiator is it just displays that you're listening. People really feel it and get it when you emotion label, when you paraphrase, right? When you mirror back the words that they say, it just is a way to display that you truly are listening. I think there's so many times when people talk, so much happens in your own head that you stop listening and you start listening more to what you're saying. So active listening is just that. It's really active. If you're doing it well, it will hurt your head. You will be tired from it because it's so engaging. But it works. And Aram, I know you have a ton of kids. You probably do this with your children.
When I'm at my best, yeah.
It's so hard, right?
It is hard. Yeah. I was going to ask which is harder, negotiating with your kids or the hostage negotiations, especially when it comes to active listening.
I tell the joke all the time. I have negotiated with the Taliban and my teenage daughters. And I will tell you, I'll negotiate with the Taliban all day long. It's so different, right? Because I think it's the long-term beatdown. No, it's the long-term relationship and interaction that makes it harder. They learn you, you learn them. I mean, that's the harder part. But all the skills I use in my hostage negotiation, I absolutely use at home with my children. It was so much easier when they were little. They didn't totally know what I'm doing. Many times now, if I try to do anything, I do get from my husband and my children, stop doing your negotiation stuff. I do get that. So I must not be doing it seamlessly enough.
Well, what I appreciate is, so active listening, the thoughts going on in our own head, it's probably more likely when I am negotiating with my teenage daughters or my spouse or something, because I'm already feeling it in because I know them so well. I already know what you're going to say.
Yes,
right.
That's a great
Versus
point.
when you're negotiating with the Taliban, you don't know what they're going to say. I mean, you almost have to be patient. So it's funny because it almost maybe flip of what we would expect there.
That is a great point. You just made me think about that differently, because I think that is it. We fill it in thinking, I already know what you're going to say. I already know how you think about this. So it would be harder when you have those relationships. So at work, right, negotiating amongst your team, recognize when you're doing that, because maybe you're wrong. I always say, when you have a negotiation with your partner or something, if in the moment you're about to say something and you're like, oh, it's going to be so good because I'm going to stick it to you and tell you you're wrong and it's going to feel so fun, that's when it should be a red flag that you are off track. And in the importance of just stepping back in that moment and then saying, okay, Melissa, this is actually your husband who you love and you would like to have a good relationship with, and maybe sticking it to him, as fun as it is, maybe it's not the best way to go in this moment. And the larger picture of caring about the relationship or where this is going is more important in that moment than me just feeling really good to prove that I'm right. But yeah.
I'll leave my comments out of this in case my wife ever listens to this one. But
come on,
she likes to stick it to me, but I think I deserve it most of the time, so it works out. So how do you handle a situation where the other party doesn't want to talk or isn't open to negotiating?
Yeah, that is very challenging. Because to me, as a negotiator, as a communicator, words is everything.
Right.
Right? It's like air. If you silent treatment me, if you just don't say anything, oh boy, you're just almost instantly cutting me off at the knees. So I would rather you scream and yell and threaten me because I have something to work with than completely silence. But I have had 2 negotiations I've been involved in where it was complete silence. One was, I was not directly involved. I was just on the team. And it was a negotiator out of New York, and she talked for like 6 hours to a door and nothing.
Wow.
And then I had my own negotiation with the gentleman I talked to you about. He barricaded in his home. We went to arrest him.
Right.
15 hours, nothing. It is hard because you are guessing about what you think they're thinking. And you're just trying to throw that out there with no response back. And like all of us, over time, it's really difficult to maintain that with no response at all.
Right.
But I have found in both of the situations, they both ended successfully. And it didn't feel like that at many different times during the 6 hours or the 15 hours. I mean, we questioned at times on the 6-hour one, we questioned, is he even in there? Maybe, did he commit suicide and he's not even alive anymore? All of these things you are always working through, and you just keep trying in different ways. So I say, you still can work through to a successful ending. But, just understand, is there some other way, and maybe if in a business negotiation you're getting silenced, is there another avenue, another way that you can kind of work yourself in there? Is it through your strategic network? Is there someone that could introduce you? Is there someone that could talk on your behalf that maybe is a better avenue in, at least to have you get started with the conversation if you're getting silenced or shut out that way? I said we use our SWAT team a lot of times to send a message in a different way, sometimes to get you to communicate with us.
Right.
Not everybody has the luxury of a SWAT team behind them. If we would, that would be great. You'd be better negotiators. But I think just trying to think creatively. I'd love to hear actually from you guys, because you're much more in that arena.
Yeah.
Is there a way that in business negotiations, if you're silenced or shut out, how can you bring out the other person?
Well, I was curious. What I heard from you was this kind of constant pressure. So and maybe pressure is not the right word, but kind of constant drumbeat of staying engaged, trying some different things. That was the second piece, trying some different moves. And certainly the idea that, hey, there is an alternative here. In your case, it's a SWAT team, what we might refer to as a BATNA. We might have them employ something just so you know, it could escalate. And that's not what we want to do. We want a peaceful resolution, and just to be able to hint at that. And so I think even in our world, being able to, again, consistent drumbeat of, hey, we're here. We want to listen. We've got things we want to ask you. We think this is what you're concerned about. What are we missing? You mentioned creativity, Melissa, right? The ability to say, hey, is there a creative solution? And obviously in business, there's more creative solutions than the situations you're faced with, which are not. I mean, we need you to give yourself up. So I think those are great. To me, those are great steps. And all the meanwhile saying, hey, and we could walk away. And that's not what our ideal choice, to walk away from this. And we could. And if that's better for you, for us to walk away and for you to walk away, then maybe we should consider that. So I think it's kind of reality testing that BATNA sometimes too, that can bring them back to the table.
I love that point. You're right on that reality testing of it. Also, what made me think when you were just saying that, Aram, is this knowing what your goal is, because
yes.
Because maybe you do want to make the sale, the deal, whatever. Maybe you're not the right fit. And sometimes people just think, I have to get it and I have to make the money and I have to, but maybe you're not the best fit. It would set you up for failure, which would make your company look bad. And so assessing that, and sometimes stepping back and just asking that question of, okay, maybe we don't have to. I think it takes the pressure off sometimes by even considering that as an option for both sides.
Yeah.
And then people might be more likely to say, oh, okay, you're not trying to force me into a sale, so I can relax a little bit. And then they appreciate that. People then tend to work with people they like more. So it can work out for you.
It seems that part of this kind of engaging with people who are maybe not, who are trying to disengage is tied to our ability to ask a good question. That isn't always easy to do. So how do you approach crafting well-designed questions? And are there examples that you've used successfully when negotiating?
You are so right that it is hard sometimes to ask a good question. I have found, even for myself, that I struggle with this. Sometimes I want to display that I really have heard what you said and I've understood it all. And I want to ask a question just for clarification. And I end up asking a question that's qualified. Did you mean this or this? And I have now taken that question and I've almost locked the person into picking two things when maybe it was a third thing and I missed it. And that made me realize I have to learn to ask more open-ended, shorter, not general questions, but in some ways a more general question that allows space to be filled with things I hadn't even considered. I think when people pay attention to the questions they ask or get asked, you realize people put so much of their agenda and perspective into the questions that they ask. And sometimes the way that you listen, the way that you ask the right questions is how the story gets told. And I don't always want to have it be limited by maybe the question that I asked or the way that I'm listening, and just trying to constantly remind myself to remain open and have the question be really non-judgmental. So I listen to every word. Because Aram, like you were talking earlier, you said something like, maybe that's pressure is not the best word, right? That means to me, in your mind, you think through each word that you use in a sentence, which is great because sometimes just that slight tweak of a word sends a different message. And so be smart and think through all the words that you're adding in because they do have different connotations. And I think it can make your questions better when you're conscious of that. One of the other things that I will say is we talk a lot about like coming up with these great questions to ask other people. What kind of questions are you asking yourself? And I think those can be really important in a negotiation too. We talked about this before. What is your goal? What am I really trying to accomplish here? That big picture, small picture, what matters? Right? If I'm trying to get my kid to do one thing, but I really care about the relationship, can I pick and choose how I approach this specific smaller situation to accomplish something in the bigger picture? Asking yourself questions, why am I feeling this way? Why am I responding in a certain way? I think can teach you a lot about people and make you a better negotiator because you understand how you felt when someone said something to you, how you felt when you felt pressured, right? So learning all those things increases your emotional intelligence and will make you have much more openness and grace to other people when they're doing it back. You can see it differently. You're like, oh, I have felt that. I know what that is. And then you can talk to that.
What do you see as the major differences between the high stress crisis situations you handled while in the FBI and situations you work with clients on today?
I recognize crisis negotiation is different in business. And we do get some pushback from people, it's very different. There are differences. I am amazed now coming out of law enforcement and trying to, utilize my skills in this space of training and consulting. There is so much that's similar. I will say the one difference that you asked, Nolan, is in crisis negotiation, it's very raw. It is very baseline human needs. So you can really talk to that and seek that. I have found many people in crisis, there is a bit of desperation for connection. So you can make it. They do put up a lot of roadblocks, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of threats and demands. And, unfortunately in my job, I very regularly was told the F word, So it doesn't seem like you can make those connections. But I loved being able to connect with people at that very raw level that I think you don't necessarily see in business. So a lot of times when I do training and we teach active listening skills, I have had some pushback, typically from men, that say the emotional labeling is weird. I wouldn't want anyone to ever do that to me. It feels really patronizing, like you're talking to a child. And so we've worked a lot around, like, I get what you're saying. And you have to learn then how to ask it in a different way that doesn't feel like me just saying, oh, Nolan, you sound really mad. We don't want you to just robotically be doing this. We want you to find a way that it can naturally flow in how you would communicate. So sometimes we say to people, instead of, wow, that would be a really stressful situation. Gosh, that must be overwhelming. You don't attach it maybe to the person. Maybe it feels better if you attach it to the situation, that for some people, they could absorb that better. But it has the same effect of you recognizing the emotion behind a situation.
Yeah, I think what I noticed when I transitioned from the Army, I had the same, spent 12 years in the Army. So I kind of had the same, I don't know if this is going to be directly applicable. But what I found is like the processes you mentioned earlier with facts assessment, recommendation, like all of these things are directly applicable in the business environment, and most businesses don't have good processes.
Yes.
So I think by focusing on those things and being able to just help them with the process aspect of things that we were ingrained with in both the military and I'm assuming the FBI, that's how I've noticed being able to have the biggest impact is just bringing those processes. So
I love that, because I found even if you just frame a conversation a certain way to start it keeps it within the bounds of, we're going to be good communicators. I'm going to give you time to talk. I'm going to have time to talk. I do care what you think. I would like to tell you my side. Sometimes just framing things, it sets the stage for how you want it to be. And people always, I think in a training, just tell me what to say. But there is not one perfect thing to say. As we go back to our assessment, you have to assess that person and figure out what works for them. So it's just learning, like you said, that process to do it.
Yeah. And another piece, and you've said this before, because you mentioned, what was the measure of success. Another piece is assessing what's the goal here, what's the desired outcome. And that's going to drive which skills we use, because I think a lot of the skills that you are discussing are applicable in so many different contexts. So when you think about measuring success in negotiation, how does your mindset around what is success impact the way that you prepare and then conduct those negotiations?
Yeah, I think mindset is everything. If you work on nothing else, if you work on what is going on in your head during the time, you can make huge changes. I reference back to when I went through negotiation training. So brand new, trying to learn, don't know anything. One of the instructors, she was this amazing negotiator, Zorka, and she said, I'd love to ask you. At the time, ISIS was the big thing where, ISIS was kidnapping American citizens. And many times they might call the family, but they weren't even really asking for anything. They were just, hey, let me show you the video of us torturing your family member. She asked the question, do you think you could negotiate with someone like that? And as a new negotiator, I was like, oof, because all I thought of, I don't know what I would say. What do you even say? And at the time, many of us were like, I don't know, probably not. And she's like, well, if you think you couldn't, then you probably shouldn't be here. I was like, oh, ouch. I guess I still have more to learn, right? I will say now, as a negotiator, all these years later, I totally understand the point of her question and that she's right. If you walk in thinking that you can't, you won't. If you walk in thinking about the person a certain way, it will change your approach to them. And so all of those things about how are you showing up can make such a difference. We had one negotiations with a drug gang that had kidnapped a rival drug dealer's mother. The son was so challenging. And the team just, it really disliked him. And that plays into it. And it can make it harder, I think, when you have somebody that you're dealing with that you just really don't like. And so you have to be so conscious of, is that a feeling that's coming up for you?
Yeah. No, I think that showing up is an extremely important aspect to this. So I was wondering, what's one thing you learned as an undercover agent that impacts how you communicate and negotiate?
The undercover program was wonderful for me to learn how to really ingratiate yourself. Again, it goes back to assessing who you're working with, right? And we talked about, where are they? Who are their friends? What are they interested in? What do they talk about? Tells you what they care about. So we had one target in an undercover we worked on. He was a bad dude, right? He did bad things. He committed crimes his entire life, but he loved his son. And you could hear him talk about his son and playing golf. And so you knew that there were areas that you could work through of things that he cared about. We also had other targets where they had kids that you never heard word one about the kids because it wasn't a priority to them. And so I can't bring my own thoughts and feelings to that situation of, you should care about this, because maybe they don't. And I have to adjust my strategy based on what they care about. And so that was the most important. I universally dealt with people who everyone would agree is not a good person. And I could have everyone supporting me, treating them poorly. That doesn't make me successful at all. So in an undercover case I had, they were like, okay, Melissa, this is what we need you to do. We need you to go with this organized crime figure who had been a mafia hitman. He'd killed like 8 people. He went to jail for it for 20 years. And they're like, we're going to send you and him somewhere together. What? But if I had in my head thought, oh my gosh, this guy has killed 8 people and he does this, and we couldn't be more different, right? We would never have made a connection. Fast forward, we have our meeting where he and I go somewhere together to meet someone. We have a surveillance team watching us. We all come back after the operation. And one of the guys on the surveillance team says, Melissa, I'm so disturbed by how comfortable and how much fun it looked like you were having with him at this place. And I said to him, I have to say, he was actually charming, you know, but if I never allowed him to be, or to approach the situation, it would have showed up really differently. We would not have been as successful in that operation either, because you would have sensed this weird disconnect where we shouldn't have been based on what the operation was. Right. So it can make a huge difference if you just allow and open yourself up.
Yeah, I call that sometimes this kind of idea of tactical rapport, tactical trust, that it's needed in the moment to accomplish whatever we're trying to do. Doesn't mean we're going to be lifelong best friends.
Correct.
But we can still create connection to do whatever work needs to happen immediately. You've done some work, I believe, with ransomware. You know, whether it's that or cyber threats or other technology advances or just social dynamics that are changing. What do you see as you look out into the future and you look into your crystal ball, Melissa? What do you see as current and future shifts in negotiation practices, whether it's around technical changes, technology changes, or societal changes, or anything like that?
In fairness, I probably am a bit of the older generation now. So I do get a little nervous of some of the technology changes. You know, I see so much about people like AI and negotiations and this. I think it would be amazing in preparation and giving you information. I just hope we don't ever replace it in put it in place of humans, right? Because there's such a power in that connection that you can make. In ransomware, yes, that is a new thing. But what I realize is it is so much like a kidnap for ransom. The benefit of it is you have time to slow down because a lot of it's over, you know, email or text or something. So it allows you time to not have to respond in the moment. So there's benefits to that. I do think the ransomware thing is just growing and growing. I think like anything, Nolan, like you mentioned, it's more just what is the process? How can we look at this problem and solve it on a lot of different fronts? I hope we're not having each company individually address it whenever it hits them. I hope we're trying to come together as corporations and government and tackle it a different way. Obviously, the FBI is doing investigations and trying to shut things down, but really coming together, because many times I think people silo themselves off. There's probably business reasons for why they don't tell a lot of people that happens, right? But we have to try to learn to proactively work together, because I think we can attack this problem differently before it's even happening to people.
Right.
And I just think if we put people in their individual little lanes where they're trying to figure it out themselves, that's not helpful. Maybe you have a decryption key already. Maybe you've dealt with these people and you can recognize from the threats that I'm getting, oh, this is such and such a group. Then you'll know everyone that's dealt with such and such a group, this is how it typically goes. Kind of establishing those patterns and practices, I think, can take some of the emotion and fear out of a situation when you can predict certain things. Maybe not exactly, but you can just say, maybe it might go this way. And then when you start to see things happening, you just feel a little bit better. We did that all the time in kidnap for ransom cases. I have not worked every kidnap for ransom case, but I can leverage the big bureau and tell you, of all the cases we've all worked, this is what we see. That has brought comfort to families when it's the only one they've ever seen and it's the worst of the worst. It helps when I tell them, we've seen this a lot. We even have it where if you were kidnapped in Mexico in this town by this group, we're probably getting in the ransom payment range of X to Y. Those kind of predictions, I just think, make people feel better when it's so unknown.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful, especially when you start thinking through in a business context the opportunities that are still here in the future. So,
Yeah.
What haven't we asked you today that you'd like to leave our listeners with as kind of a final key takeaway?
Oh, what a broad question. I love it. I guess my biggest takeaway is I hear so many people wanting to learn a tip or a technique or a trick. Tell me what to say here. Just give me the, and they just want the quick 2-second answer to solve a very complex problem. And we talked about this earlier. There's so many layers in a negotiations. What I would love people to do is study it. I think you should study it and understand these concepts, but really absorb them at a cellular level. Right? Like the mindset, what you're bringing to the table, how you feel about the other person. If you're coming in to win, to dominate, and take everything, I think you've missed your mark. If you're faking, the empathy and all those things, people are going to know it. You may be successful in the short term in this one negotiation. I just don't think that benefits you in the long run. And so I guess that's it. I would love people to just really study it and understand it from the human element, more so than just tell me what I can do to win. I just think you missed the mark if you're talking like that.
I love that response, to study, to absorb it. Can I add, and then really practice, like dedicate practice. Yes. I mean, I think one thing that I love about what you and your colleagues do, Melissa, is intentional practice, whether it's kind of the back-to-back, rehearsing a negotiation because we know we don't get to see the person in real life. So we're going to be talking through a phone or talking through a door. So we're going to practice the way we're going to do it in real life. And I think we can all just practice more.
Yeah. And Aram, what I love about that is practice everywhere. Practice in the low stakes and in the high stakes, right? Because if you can't do it in your personal life with the people that love you, how do you think you're going to do it with someone that doesn't want to give you anything, that doesn't like you, right? So, I don't know. I fail miserably with my children every day. But it gives me opportunity to practice and go, oop, that went horribly wrong. Now I understand why I didn't. I was off track. Let me try this. And then you just try the concept, the idea that we talk about, and then you see the effect. Then you feel so good about it. Then you practice it elsewhere. It becomes more natural. Then when you're in your high stakes negotiation, it just flows out better. So I agree. Practice everywhere.
Well, Melissa, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today and for sharing your insights.
Thank you both. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, that is it for us on today's podcast. If you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the NEGOTIATEx podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to NEGOTIATEx.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks. And I'll see you over in the next video.